Bothering to knock, she kicked the door open. "You thief!" she shrieked. Mercy jumped, her eyes wide with terror. "You filthy little maid! How dare you steal my clothes and my man?" Mercy fell to her knees, tears spilling from her eyes. "Please, miss, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I was foolish. It will never happen again. Please forgive me." Agnes sneered. "Of course it won't happen again, because you are fired." Once upon a time, in the heart of a thriving village called Nadi, there lived a wealthy and powerful king named Oduma. King Oduma was admired by his people, not just for his wealth and authority, but for his character. He was a ruler who led with kindness, balancing mercy with the wisdom to be firm when necessary. He cared deeply for his people, listening to their concerns and addressing their needs. But beyond his duties as a king, Oduma was a devoted husband, and his love for his wife was known throughout the village of Nadi. Everyone admired their bond. King Oduma's life seemed perfect. He had a vast kingdom, loyal subjects, and a wife he cherished. However, there was one shadow that loomed over their happiness. The royal couple had only one child, a daughter named Mercy. Mercy was a bright, beautiful girl, the apple of her parents' eyes. They loved her deeply and raised her like the princess she was. Yet, there was an unspoken worry in their hearts. Tradition demanded that the king have a male heir to inherit the throne, and despite their prayers and hopes, no son had been born. For 15 long years, King Oduma and Queen Ugoma prayed to the gods, made sacrifices, and waited patiently, their hope flickering like a fragile candle in the wind. Then, one day, their prayers were finally answered. Queen Ugoma conceived, and the news spread like wildfire through the village. Nadi rejoiced, for their prince was on the way. When the time came, Queen Ugoma went into labor, but what was meant to be a moment of great joy quickly turned into a nightmare. The labor was difficult and prolonged, and though the queen gave birth to a son, their joy was short-lived. The baby boy, their long-awaited prince, passed away just a few hours after he was born. Queen Ugoma, weakened and heartbroken by the loss of her child, could not endure the grief. Not long after, she too passed away, leaving the kingdom in shock and despair. The tragedy struck King Oduma like a thunderbolt. One moment, he was celebrating the birth of his son, and the next, he was plunged into the deepest sorrow. The village of Nadi fell silent. Their vibrant, joyous community was now shrouded in mourning. Mercy, just 15 years old, was devastated. She had lost her mother, her closest companion and confidant. But her grief, as deep as it was, paled in comparison to the weight of sorrow that crushed her father. King Oduma, once a pillar of strength, fell gravely ill. His illness baffled the village healers, for it was obvious that it was not of the body, but of the mind and spirit. The loss of his wife and son had shattered him. He no longer found joy in his kingdom, his people, or even his beloved daughter. Day by day, he withdrew into himself, sinking deeper into despair. Mercy tried everything to bring her father back to life, to remind him of the love they still shared and the responsibilities he bore. But her efforts were in vain. The king barely seemed to notice her or anyone else. For 2 long years, the king's condition worsened. The once mighty ruler who had stood tall and proud was now a shadow of his former self. And then one quiet night, King Oduma closed his eyes and never opened them again. His passing marked the end of an era, leaving the throne of Nnadi without a ruler and Mmasị without a father. Once again, the village of Nnadi was plunged into mourning, its people clad in sorrow. Yet, as with all things, life had to go on. Since the day King Oduma fell ill, the affairs of the kingdom had been managed by the kingmakers, a council of elders tasked with ensuring stability. Now, with the king gone and no male heir to inherit the throne, the council convened to decide the future. It was tradition that the kingship would pass to the next eligible family, and so the mantle fell upon a man named Obi. Obi was crowned the new king of Nnadi, but beneath the surface of his regal demeanor lurked ambition and greed. Obi coveted everything that belonged to King Oduma, his wealth, his gold, everything that he owned, including his only daughter, Mmasị. King Obi decreed that Mmasị would become his wife, making her both his queen and his ultimate prize. However, Mmasị was not a woman to be easily swayed. She stood before the king, her voice unwavering as she refused his proposal. "You are too old for me," she said bluntly, "and I will never marry a man I do not love." Her words, though honest, struck at the king's pride. King Obi, humiliated and enraged, gave her an ultimatum. She could either marry him and remain in the palace, or leave and face the world alone. Desperate, Mmasị pleaded with the king. "Please, your majesty," she begged, "have mercy on me. I have nowhere to go." But King Obi's heart was cold and he dismissed her cries. The elders, though sympathetic to Mmasị's plight, were powerless. The king's word was law, and they could not openly defy him. With no other choice, Mmasị packed her belongings and prepared to leave the palace she had called home all her life. Staying in Nnadi was unthinkable. The shame of being cast out by the king would haunt her every step. So she sought refuge with Uli, her late mother's loyal nurse and confidant. Uli welcomed her into her humble hut and tried to reason with her. "Mmasị," she said gently, "why not marry the king? He may be older, but you have a life of comfort and respect as a queen. It is a life befitting of a princess like you." But Mmasị shook her head, her resolve unbroken. "I will not marry a man twice my age, a man I do not love. My parents taught me what true love looks like, and I will not settle for anything less. I would rather live as a commoner than betray my heart." Seeing that Mmasị would not be swayed, Uli decided to help her escape the clutches of King Obi. "There is a kingdom far to the east called Ezele," Uli explained. "It is large, prosperous, and no one will know you there. I have a sister, Egodi, who lives there. She will help you find work and start a new life. When you arrive, tell her Ulimma sent you." Mmasị's eyes filled with gratitude. She embraced Uli tightly. "Thank you," she said. "I will never forget your kindness." And so, at dawn, with only a small bundle of belongings, Mmasị set off on her journey to Ezele. This was how Mmasị's ordeal began. It took Mmasị more than 14 longer days of walking to reach Ezele. Each day was a test of her strength as she passed through small villages, stopping wherever she could find shelter for the night. Her legs ached, her feet were blistered, but her determination to reach her destination kept her moving. Finally, one bright morning, she arrived in Ezele, and it was everything Uli had promised and more. Ezele was not just big, it was breathtaking. The village seemed alive with energy and color. Nnadi, beautiful as it was, paled in comparison. The streets were lined with brick houses, something Mmasi had never seen before, and the women wore makeup that made their faces shine like the morning sun. What fascinated her the most, however, were the people who looked so different. Their skin was pale, white like the inside of a yam, and their hair was a rainbow of shades: golden, red, brown, and even grey. Some of it was straight, while others had hair that fell in long bouncy curls, and their speech was strange, as if their voices came from their noses. Mmasi clutched her small bundle of belongings tightly as she looked around in awe. This place was nothing like Nnadi or any of the villages she had passed through. It did not take her long to find Egodi. Everyone seemed to know her name, and they pointed Mmasi in the right direction. Aunt Egodi lived in a small neat brick house tucked behind an enormous mansion. Mmasi had never seen a house so grand in her life. It towered over everything, with tall windows and wide doors, and she could hardly believe that anyone lived in such a place. Egodi welcomed her warmly. She was a fine-looking woman in her early 50s, with bright eyes and a warm smile. She listened as Mmasi explained her journey and how Uli had sent her. "You've done well to come here," Egodi said kindly. "You'll be safe now." Mmasi soon learned that Egodi worked in the grand mansion, which belonged to a man named Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Hawkins was the owner of the largest palm oil refinery in Ezele, a man respected throughout the community. The kingdom had acres and acres of palm trees that had once gone to waste. But Mr. Hawkins had arrived, and the refinery had brought wealth and progress to Ezele. He employed many villagers and paid them generously, earning their loyalty and admiration. However, not everyone in the Hawkins household was as kind as the master of the house. His wife, Dorothy, and their daughter, Agnes, carried themselves with an air of superiority, treating others as though they were beneath them. As fate would have it, Agnes was in need of a personal maid. Egodi, who was a trusted member of the household staff, wasted no time in recommending Mmasi. With Egodi's influence, it wasn't difficult for Mmasi to secure the position. At first, Mmasi was relieved. The job provided a fair salary, food to eat, and a roof over her head. After weeks of hardship and uncertainty, it felt like a blessing. But as time went on, her new life began to reveal its challenges. Agnes was a difficult mistress, impossible to please. No matter how hard Mmasi tried, she would find fault with everything, from how the bed was made to how her shoes were polished. Day by day, the work grew more demanding, and Mmasi began to feel the weight of her new reality. One evening, after an especially grueling day, Mmasi sat alone in her small room, her body aching and her spirit weary. Tears welled up in her eyes as memories of her old life flooded her mind. She thought about her father, her mother, and the home she had left behind. She remembered the beautiful things she once owned, the servants who had attended to her every need, and the carefree days she had taken for granted. Now she was the one serving others, working tirelessly for a woman who showed her no kindness. Mercy buried her face in her hands and let the tears flow. Life is so unpredictable, she whispered to herself. The once proud princess of Unadi was now a common maid in a foreign kingdom. She cried until her body could take no more, and eventually she fell asleep. Her dreams filled with the faces of those she had lost and the life that seemed so far away. The next day, she woke up with a new resolve. She told herself she wouldn't let the weight of her life break her down. If life in Ezele had taught her anything, it was to keep pushing no matter how hard things got. And so the days turned into months, and the months into years, as Mercy worked tirelessly in the Hawkins household. 2 years passed, and the end of the year arrived once again. In Ezele, it was a time of celebration marked by the grand annual party that Mr. Hawkins hosted in his massive hall. The event was usually the talk of the town, drawing elite guests from all over the kingdom, wealthy Ezele locals and white settlers alike. Village maidens from affluent families would arrive dressed in luxurious gowns, their hair styled in elaborate designs, blending in with the elegant foreign ladies. The air was filled with the melody of unfamiliar music, laughter, and the soft hum of chatter. The atmosphere was nothing short of magical. Mercy vividly remembered the first time she had witnessed the party. She had stood in the corner of the hall, holding a tray of drinks, her eyes wide with wonder. The music had been unlike anything she had ever heard before, and the sight of the dazzling guests had left her spellbound. For a moment, she left herself imagining what it would be like to wear a gown like theirs, to dance gracefully in the hall, and to catch the attention of a charming man who would whisk her away to a life of happiness. But reality had quickly brought her back to earth. She was just a maid now. Her real blood meant nothing here. Her place was in the background, serving drinks, invisible to the glittering crowd. This year, however, Mercy decided to do something bold, something daring. She was going to borrow one of Miss Agnes's beautiful dresses. Miss Agnes had so many, and surely she wouldn't notice if one went missing for just one night. Mercy told herself it wasn't stealing. She would return the dress untouched. She even planned to borrow a pair of Agnes's fancy shoes. For one evening, she would pretend to be the princess she once was. She did not dare tell Auntie Egodi about her plan. Egodi would surely have her head on a platter. So Mercy kept her little secret to herself, her heart racing with both excitement and fear. When the day of the party finally came, the Hawkins mansion was alive with activity. Guests filled the grand hall, laughter and music spilling into the corridors. Mercy, however, wasn't among the staff serving that evening. She was upstairs, standing in front of Agnes's mirror, dressed in one of her stunning red gowns and a pair of matching slippers that fit just well enough. She dabbed on a touch of makeup and tried her best to style her thick afro hair. When she was done, she gazed into the mirror and could not help but smile. For the first time in years, she looked every bit the princess she had once been. Taking a deep breath, Mercy slipped out of the room and made her way downstairs, careful to avoid any prying eyes. Her heart raced as she approached the doors leading to the grand hall. She could hear the music and the laughter on the other side, and for a moment she imagined herself walking in, blending seamlessly with the elite guests. But then fear crept in. What if someone recognized her? What if Agnes herself saw her? Her hands began to tremble, and her feet refused to move forward. At the last second, Mercy turned away from the hall. Instead, she slipped through the doors leading to the garden. The cool night air hit her face, calming her nerves as she stepped into the quiet, dimly lit space. The garden was peaceful, a stark contrast to the lively party inside. She found a bench beneath a tree and sat down, gazing up at the stars. For a long while, she lost herself in her thoughts, wondering what her life might have been like if everything hadn't fallen apart. Her reverie was broken by the sound of someone clearing their throat. Startled, Mercy jumped up and turned around, expecting to see one of the Hawkins household staff, or worse, Agnes. Instead, she found herself staring at the most beautiful man she had ever seen. He was tall, with skin as pale as moonlight and eyes as blue as the ocean. His hair was golden and curled slightly at the ends. Her breath caught in her throat, and she instinctively took a step back, ready to flee. But his deep, soothing voice stopped her. "I did not mean to startle you," he said, his accent lilting and soft. "I just needed some fresh air. Please, don't leave because of me." His words were gentle and his smile was warm. Mercy hesitated, unsure of what to do. But when he gestured towards the bench, she nodded and sat back down, her heart still pounding. He took a seat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them, filled only by the rustling of leaves and the faint hum from the music in the hall. The young man's name was Malcolm, the only son of Mr. Hawkins's longtime friend and business associate, Mr. Maverick Hawthorne. Hawthorne had just passed after a lingering illness, and so his son was finally persuaded to come down and take control of the family's business. This party was the first he had attended, considering that it was his first year there. The night was not even over and he already wished he could be home. He did not enjoy being around so many people at the same time, and the fact that every lady in the room was ready to tear him apart with their eyes. He was used to having that effect on women initially. He used to enjoy it, but as he got older, it became just very annoying. He had just managed to sneak out of the party and wandered into the garden just so that he could have some peace. And then, here he was, standing face to face with the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her skin was like caramel, and her eyes were so beautiful he could look into them all day long. He sat down beside her. The both of them watched the stars in companionable silence. After a while, he looked at her, curiosity getting the better of him. "How come you're out here, seated alone? Looks like you don't want to be here." Mercy stiffened slightly at the question, her heart pounding. She could not afford to give away too much information. She decided the safest response was to turn the question back on him. "You don't look like you're enjoying the party either. Why?" she asked, carefully choosing her words. Malcolm smiled at her reply, charmed by the way she spoke. Her accent was different, her voice gentle but firm. "Let's just say I'm not a fan of crowds. I needed some fresh air," he explained. Mercy looked at him cautiously. Warning bells were going off in her head. She knew she was playing a dangerous game by engaging with him. If he found out she was a maid in the Hawkins household, everything would fall apart. But there was something about him that drew her in. Something that made her want to forget her worries for just one night. After all, wasn't this what she had wished for? to meet a handsome man who would make her feel like a princess again, even if just for a fleeting moment. They began to talk, slowly at first, but soon the conversation flowed effortlessly. Malcolm asked her about Ezele, and Mmasi shared stories about the village and its culture, carefully avoiding any details that might reveal her identity. He made her laugh with his sharp wit and humor, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Mmasi felt like her old self again, free, happy, and alive. The garden faded into the background as they talked. Time seemed to stand still, and for those precious moments, they were just two people sharing stories under the stars. Mmasi had almost forgotten who she was and where she came from. She let herself enjoy his company, savoring the feeling of being seen and heard, even if only for a little while. But reality came crashing back when she glanced up at the sky and realized how late it was. The party would soon be ending, and she needed to return before anyone noticed her absence, or worse, discovered her borrowed dress. She stood up abruptly, breaking the spell. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly, avoiding his gaze. "I have to go." Malcolm rose to his feet as well, concern flickering across his face. "Wait," he said gently. "At least tell me your name." Mmasi hesitated. Giving him her name felt risky. What if he asked questions later? But then she reasoned with herself. There were likely countless women named Mmasi in the kingdom. What were the chances he would ever connect her to a maid that she truly was? She decided to take the risk. "My name is Mmasi," she said softly. Malcolm smiled, the name rolling off his tongue with a slight accent. "Mmasi," he repeated, savoring the sound. "It's a beautiful name, and it suits you." She couldn't help but smile at the way he pronounced it, slightly off but endearing. "Good night, sir," she said, dipping her head politely. "Malcolm," he corrected, stepping closer. "My name is Malcolm. It was a pleasure meeting you, Mmasi." Her heart fluttered at the way he said her name again, but she knew she couldn't linger. Without another word, she turned and walked briskly towards the side door, slipping back into the shadows of the night. As she disappeared into the darkness, Malcolm stood there, staring after her. Something about her was different, unlike anyone he had ever met. For the first time in a long while, he felt truly intrigued. Once Mmasi was inside, she ran as fast as her legs could carry her. She needed to return all the things she had borrowed before the party was over. Later that night, she lay in her bed, smiling to herself. It had been the best night of her life. She had met a handsome man, and he had swept her off her feet. But she knew she was only living in fantasy. Mr. whatever he said his name was, would not even spare her a second glance if he knew who or what she was. Meanwhile, across town, Malcolm and his family returned home. As soon as they walked through the door, Malcolm headed straight to his father's old study, which was now his sanctuary. He sank into the chair, the ghost of a smile playing on his lips, as memories of the evening flooded his mind. That woman, the mysterious Mmasi, was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her laugh, her grace, the way her eyes sparkled under the moonlight. He couldn't shake the thoughts of her. Just as he was settling into his thoughts, the door swung open with a dramatic flair, and in walked Anna, his younger sister, her expression mischievous. "Can't someone breathe in peace around here?" Malcolm groaned, pretending to be annoyed. Anna, completely unfazed, plopped down on the armrest of his chair, grinning like a cat that had just cornered a mouse. Oh, you'll get your peace after you tell me where you disappeared to tonight. I saw you sneak out of the party, and then you come back, grinning like you've won the lottery. What were you up to? Malcolm leaned, crossing his arms. You should really learn to mind your own business, Anna. But Anna was relentless. Oh, it's definitely a woman, she teased, her eyes gleaming with excitement. You've been smiling since we left the party, so what's her name? With a smirk, Malcolm decided to mess with her. Her name is Nonya, he said casually. Anna blinked. Nonya who? None of your business, he shot back with a mischievous grin. Anna narrowed her eyes at him, clearly unimpressed. But at least now I know it's a woman. She stood up, brushing her imaginary dust off her dress, and added with a cheeky grin, "You're not getting rid of me that easily, big brother." She waltzed out of the room, humming to herself, leaving Malcolm laughing. As the door closed behind her, the laughter faded, and Malcolm's thoughts returned to Mercy. She was intelligent and refreshingly genuine, unlike the other girls he had been accustomed to. He couldn't stop replaying their conversation in his mind, her melodic voice still echoing in his ears. What intrigued him most was how different she was from the other women he had encountered. She did not fawn over him or try to impress him. If anything, she seemed to hold herself back, keeping a part of her hidden. He wanted to know more, to see her again, but all he had was her name. Still, he was determined. He did not know her family or where she lived, but he vowed to find her. Ezele was a vast place, but he believed that fate would bring their paths together again. Unfortunately, just 2 days after the party, an urgent business matter called him back to London. With little choice, Malcolm boarded a ship and left Ezele and any chance of finding Mercy behind. As the weeks turned into months, life became a whirlwind of responsibilities and travel. But no matter how busy he was, thoughts of Mercy lingered in the back of his mind. She was a mystery he could not forget, a fleeting encounter that had left a lasting impression and haunted his dreams. The year passed quickly, filled with long days of work and nights of solitude. But by the end of it, Malcolm had finally settled his affairs in London, ensuring he wouldn't have to travel back as frequently. He felt a sense of relief, knowing he could focus more on his new life in Ezele. As the end of the year approached, only one thought consumed him: Mr. Hawkins' party. It was the only place he had met Mercy, and perhaps if luck was on his side, it would be the place he saw her again. With renewed determination, Malcolm made up his mind. He must attend the party, not for business, nor for social scene, but for the slim chance that he might catch a glimpse of the woman who had captured his thoughts for an entire year. For an entire year, Mercy had carried the memory of the blue-eyed stranger in her heart. She searched for him in every marketplace. She searched for him in the church. She searched for him at every street she walked. Her eyes unconsciously searched for him, but he was nowhere to be found. It was as if he had just vanished into thin air. But yet, she couldn't forget the way he had looked at her, the way he had made her feel like she was someone special. So when the end of the year approached, she made up her mind. She would sneak into Mr. Hawkins' grand party again. Maybe, just maybe he would be there. If not, then she would at least have one more night to pretend to escape, to be a princess once again. Just like before, she slipped into one of Agnes's extravagant gowns. This time it was a deep green dress that shimmered under the candlelight. She styled her hair as best as she could, added a touch of makeup, and took a deep breath before making her way downstairs. But unlike the previous year, she did not even bother trying to enter the grand hall. Instead, she walked straight to the garden, the place where they had first met. She knew it was foolish. A whole year had passed. He was gone and had probably forgotten about her. But still, her heart clung to the tiny hope that fate would be kind to her just once more. As she reached the garden doors, she hesitated. Doubt crept into her mind. What if he was not there? What if this is all just a fantasy? But then she straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin and whispered to herself, if he isn't here tonight, then I'll simply enjoy my last night as a princess and forget him forever. With that, she stepped into the cool night air. And then she saw him. Malcolm stood in the garden, waiting. Their eyes met, and for a moment, everything else faded away. Mercy's breath hitched, and an uncontrollable smile spread across her lips. He was here, and he had been waiting for her. Malcolm had been in the garden for what felt like an eternity. He had fled the party as soon as he had finished greeting the guests. Desperate to avoid Agnes, who had spent the entire year chasing him around like a shadow. He was exhausted by her relentless attempts to win his favor. Tonight, more than anything, he wanted peace. But as the minutes dragged on, doubt crept in. What if she doesn't come? What if she was just a dream, a fleeting memory? He was just about to give up when the doors opened, and there she was. The woman who had haunted his thoughts for an entire year stood before him, bathed in moonlight, looking even more beautiful than he remembered. And when she smiled at him, his heart flipped. He hadn't imagined her. She was real. The sound of slow melodic music drifted from the hall, filling the garden with a dreamy atmosphere. Malcolm stepped forward, holding out his hand. "Dance with me," he said softly. Mercy hesitated. "I don't know how to dance to your kind of music," she admitted shyly. "Then let me show you," he said with a smile. Before she could protest, he gently pulled her into his arms. One of his hands rested on the small of her back. The other held her hand, guiding her movements. Instinctively, she placed her free hand on his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin through his coat. They swayed together, their eyes locked, lost in each other. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not her stolen dress, not her secret identity, not the world that would never allow them to be together. But the magic was short-lived. The doors to the house creaked open, and the sharp sound of approaching footsteps shattered their trance. Mercy turned her head and froze. Standing there, arms crossed and eyes burning with rage, was Agnes. Panic shot through Mercy's veins. Without a word, she tore herself away from Malcolm and ran. She did not stop to think. She did not stop to breathe. She just ran, not up the grand staircase, but back to her room, slamming the door shut behind her. Her heart pounded violently in her chest as she ripped off the gown, her hands trembling. What have I done, she thought. Panic setting in. I've ruined everything. I've ruined my life. Oh God, what do I do? She cried. Back in the garden, Agnes glared at Malcolm, her arms folded tightly under her chest. "So, this is why you have been avoiding me all night," she hissed. "Because of her? I knew you were up to something. I saw you sneak out, but I never imagined you'd be out here frolicking with that thing." Malcolm barely heard her. His mind was spinning in a different direction. Mercy was gone again, and he still knew nothing about her. But one thing was certain. Agnes recognized her. She knew who Mercy was, but he also knew that asking for her help was a terrible idea. He knew exactly who to ask for answers. Anna. With a polite but distant nod, he turned to Agnes. "Good night, Miss Agnes." And with that, he walked away, leaving her fuming. Agnes seethed with rage. She had spent an entire year fantasizing about a life with Malcolm, dreaming of the day he would see her as more than just Mr. Hawkins' daughter. Yet, here he was, dancing so intimately in her garden with her maid, wearing her dress. Blinded by fury, she stormed through the halls, marching straight to Mercy's room. Without bothering to knock, she kicked the door open. "You thief!" she shrieked. Mercy jumped, her eyes wide with terror. "You filthy little maid! How dare you steal my clothes and my man?" Mercy fell to her knees, tears spilling from her eyes. "Please, miss, I'm so sorry," she sobbed. "I was foolish. It will never happen again. Please forgive me." Agnes sneered. "Of course it won't happen again, because you are fired." Mercy gasped, but Agnes wasn't done. "And as for this dress," she said, snatching it from the floor, "you've ruined it with your poverty-stricken, disease-infested body. I won't be caught dead in it now. Your salary for this month isn't even enough to replace it, so consider it payment for your theft." Mercy sobbed harder, but Agnes wasn't finished yet. "You are never to set foot in this house again. I will make sure no one hires you. Not in this household, not in this village, not anywhere. If I ever see your face in Ezele again, I will tell everyone what a dirty little thief you are." With that, Agnes stormed out, slamming the door behind her, leaving Mercy crumpled on the floor in tears. Her world had just shattered. Mercy remained on the floor, her sobs shaking her entire body. The weight of Agnes's words crushed her, suffocating her in despair. She had lost everything: her job, her home, her security, and worst of all, she had been banished from the only place she had ever known since she left home. Her foolish dream had cost her everything. With trembling hands, she wiped her face and forced herself to think. She could not afford to wallow in misery. Morning would come soon, and Agnes would not hesitate to drag her out and humiliate her in front of the entire household. And so she picked her few belongings and went to Auntie Godi. She would hide there for a few days before she figured out the next thing to do. Auntie Godi welcomed her into her room, but the woman was not pleased to hear what happened. "How could you do such a thing, Mercy? See now, you have put yourself in a very difficult situation," Auntie Godi scolded gently. All Mercy could do was cry. Truly, she had brought all this upon herself. But Auntie Godi, ever the loving and caring woman, comforted Mercy, assuring her that they would both find a way out. Meanwhile, back in the grand house, Malcolm was pacing in his study, his mind racing. He had lost her again. Just when he had finally found her, Just when he was certain that their meeting a year ago had not been a dream, she had slipped through his fingers. But this time, he would not let her go so easily. The next morning, before anyone else was awake, Malcolm knocked on Anna's door. "Anna, it's me. I'm coming in," he said impatiently, stepping into the room. His sister, half asleep, groaned from under her covers. "Malcolm, if this isn't about a life-threatening emergency, I swear it is," he cut in, pulling the blanket off her face. "I need your help." Anna sat up, rubbing her eyes, sensing the immediacy of the situation. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed. "It's about the girl from the party," he said, his voice serious. "The one from last year. I saw her again last night, but she ran away before I could find out who she really is." Anna's sleepy expression quickly turned into excitement. "You finally found her? After an entire year? Tell me everything." Malcolm sighed. "There's no time for that. I need to know who she is, where she lives, everything. And I think Agnes knows." Anna made a disgusted face. "Oh, Agnes. Of course she does. She probably ruined everything, didn't she?" Malcolm clenched his jaw. "Most likely." Anna smirked. "Lucky for you, big brother. Agnes and I don't get along, which means getting information from her will not be easy." She stretched her arms dramatically. "Give me a few hours." Malcolm exhaled in relief. "Thank you, Anna. I'm so grateful." His sister winked. "You can thank me when you find your mystery girl." Anna did not disappoint. By midday, she stormed into Malcolm's study, slamming the door behind her. Well, she said, arms crossed, a victorious grin on her face. "I have news." Malcolm stood. "What did you find out?" Anna leaned against the desk. "Our dear Agnes was livid this morning. Apparently, she caught her maid. Yes, her maid, wearing one of her dresses and dancing with you. And let's just say she did not take it well." Malcolm's stomach twisted. "She was a maid?" Anna nodded. "Not just any maid. Her name is Mercy. She has worked for Agnes for 2 years. But after last night's little incident, she was fired. No job, no home, no nothing." Malcolm's blood ran cold. Mercy. She had lost everything because of him. "Guess what I also found out?" Anna continued, her eyes twinkling with excitement. "She is a princess." "What? How is that even possible? You just said she was a maid. Now she's a princess. I'm confused. What is happening?" Anna was really enjoying the moment. So it turns out that after Mercy was fired, she did not leave immediately. She sought shelter with a woman. I don't remember her name. However, it's this woman who brought Mercy into Mr. Hawkins' home. I had a chat with the woman and she told me how Mercy had lost everything after her father, the king of a certain kingdom, I don't remember the name, died without an heir, and she was forced out of the home she loved because she refused to marry the new king, a man who was twice her age. Wow, that's a lot for a young girl. Malcolm expelled the air he did not even realize he was holding. He clenched his fists. Where is she now? Upstairs in my room as we speak. Malcolm looked up sharply. What? She's in this house? Yes, Anna said, nodding her head. Agnes swore to make sure that no one employed her. She even went as far as threatening to announce to everyone that she stole her dresses and jewelries if she did not leave easily for good. And to make matters worse, her salary for the month was withheld. She has nowhere to go. Malcolm shook his head. "You're right. This is all my fault. I'll fix it. Thank you, Anna." Without waiting for a response, Malcolm took the stairs 2 at a time, and when he opened Anna's door, truly, Mercy was there. She looked different now. Her clothes were simple, but her beauty was still untouchable. Her skin was still smooth, flawless. Her hair was still thick and dark, and her eyes still said a million things at once. She stood when he came in. They both stared at each other in silence. Then she spoke first. "I'm so sorry that I am not what you expected, or who you think that I am. I am not a thief. I swear I was going to return the dress just like the first time. I just wanted to see you again." Malcolm moved quickly and took her in his arms. "You don't have to apologize. I know you did not steal, and I need you to know that you are more than I expected. I could not stop thinking about you all year, and I was at that party last night just because I wanted to see you again." He broke contact and looked into her eyes. "Ever since that night I set my eyes on you, you have never left my mind. I had to leave the country almost immediately for personal reasons, but I see you in my dreams every night. I have never felt this way for a woman before. I love you, Mercy, and I want you to be mine forever. I want you to be my wife." A frown formed on Mercy's face. "I've thought about you all year too, even looked for you. But as much as I feel the same way you do, marrying you will not be a good idea." She looked up at him. "We are different, from different worlds, different race, and I am a maid, a common maid. Your mother or even the society will never approve of this." "I don't care about what anyone thinks," Malcolm interjected before she went any further. "I know who you are. Anna told me everything. I know you were not born a maid, but even if it were so, I still do not care about all of that. Times have changed, Mercy. I could mention a dozen of white noble men who have settled with beautiful black women just like you, and none of them cared what anyone thinks. What we feel for each other is all that matters. I don't care about your color. I love your skin and the way it shines. It is one of the most beautiful things about you. You are so beautiful I could just sit and stare at you all day long." Mercy smiled, showing her perfect set of teeth. "You are good with words. No. This is me appreciating God's creation, and everything I say is true. Mercy, I've lost you a year ago, and now that I've found you, I'm never letting you go." Mercy's eyes filled with tears. All she ever wanted was to find a man who would love her like her father loved her mother, and in truth, she had never believed it possible. Just when she thought all was lost, everything finally fell in place. She went straight into his arms again as the tears fell freely. "Thank you for being here for me," she said, trying hard to comport herself. "Don't thank me," Malcolm responded. "Just tell me you love me." "I love you. I love you very much," she said, now smiling through her tears. And this was just the beginning of Malcolm and Mercy's forever story. Surprisingly, Lady Elizabeth, Malcolm's mother, did not object to their union. In fact, Anna had briefed her about the latest happenings even before Malcolm had the chance to do so himself. Lady Elizabeth welcomed Mercy into the family with open arms. And because Mercy insisted that she had nothing to go back to in Nnadi, the couple had a big, extravagant wedding, which would be the talk of the whole kingdom of Ezele for years to come. To repay Auntie Egodi for her kindness, Mercy made sure that she brought her out of the Hawkins' home. She lived on her own in one of the houses owned by Malcolm's family and was well taken care of. The woman had been like a mother to her all these years, and Mercy made sure that she cared for her just as she would her own mother. As for Agnes, she was still furious. Malcolm had rejected her advances and chosen her maid over her. Her friends laughed at her. She had lied to them that Malcolm already had eyes for her and even proposed marriage to her. Now she was beyond humiliated. And what pained her the most was that Mercy was now above her and there was nothing she could do. But pay no attention to her, my dear listeners. She will soon get over herself. I only hope that she learns to treat people with respect going forward. Hey lovers! Thank you for listening to this story. If you are new here, welcome to our community. I hope you enjoyed listening to this story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button. And to support the growth of our community, give this video a big thumbs up. If you know someone who would enjoy a story like this, do not hesitate to share. Don't forget to leave a comment down below. Remember, like, share, drop a comment and subscribe. I'll take my leave now, but I hope to see you in my next video. Bye.